What's a fact that's real, but sounds completely fake? Mantis shrimp strike their prey so quickly, with speed up to 51 miles per hour and acceleration up to 10,400 grams, that it generates cavitation bubbles between their claw and the surface of the prey. The prey is hit twice, first by the claw at a force of 1,500 newtons, and second by the collapse of the cavitation bubbles, which produces a shock wave strong enough to stun or kill much larger prey than the shrimp itself. They can crack aquarium glass and split open a human thumb. Edit accuracy. I did a little more reading, and here are some other fun facts. Some species of mantis shrimp are rainbow-colored and mind-bogglingly beautiful. Humans have 3 types of color-receptive cone cells in our eyes that allow us to see all the colors we do. Mantis shrimps have 16 types of color-receptive cone cells and are able to see both UV and polarized light. The force of the collapsing cavitation bubbles produces temperatures of several thousand kelvins and also emits tiny bursts of light called sonoluminescence. Finally, here is a video of an unfortunate dude getting punched in the foot by a pissed-off mantis shrimp. https://m.youtube.com/watch v equals ab cos f's imksu. Mantis shrimps have 16 types of color-receptive cone cells and are able to see both UV and polarized light. I remember someone saying that this makes them see everything in a tie-dye-like pattern of colors, but I have no idea where I read that anymore or if it's true. I've seen the Middle East, there's a lot of sand there, so I looked it up, and it's because they use sand in construction. Places like Dubai do a lot of construction, and even though those cities are literally surrounded by desert, wind-formed desert sand is too smooth for construction. https://www.bbc.com/worklife/article/20160502 Even desert city Dubai imports its sand. This is why I had half a kidney removed due to kidney stones, at the ripe old age of 24, and that fucker bled so much, I had to have a few blood transfusions. Drink more water, people, and don't consume cheap protein powder that's full of shit. Edit. Apologies guys, I've been well busy. I don't think the website I bought my protein from even exists anymore. UK based if that helps. But it was cheap as chips. On a similar note, what do Anne Frank, MLK Jr., and Barbara Walters have in common? They were born the same year. Things many view as history were lived experiences by people alive today. The first African American children to go to desegregated schools in the South are the same age or younger than most Redditors' grandparents. Many of our parents are the same age. Barings Bank, one of the largest banks in Britain, provided the loans to the U.S. to buy the Louisiana Purchase. This led to Napoleon giving up control of most of France's holdings in the Americas without Britain firing a shot. It also led to the fledgling American government being deeply in debt to a British bank. The gold Napoleon got in exchange, he spent it all on preparing an army to invade England, an effort that had to be abandoned. The British were doing some 4D chess here. The guillotine is actually one of the most humane methods of execution. We use the methods we do in the modern day because they look better to the viewers. Lethal injection can cause extreme pain even when done correctly. Gas is also extremely painful, and the electric chair is just hell on earth. The most humane way to execute someone is from close range with a large caliber handgun or shotgun to the lower back of the skull. Death is much quicker. A class of fungus known as mycorrhizae can infect the roots of plants, leaching away the sugars created by the plants, but in return giving them access to more nutrients. As the fungus can spread much further than the roots of the plant, the fungus can actually connect two plants together, allowing them to share nutrients and communicate with each other, warning of invading insects or pathogens so the other plants can prepare defenses. For example, in an underground network of sorts. There was a Charo army created here in Mexico to defend the country if the Nazis arrived. Imagine a similar outfit as the one the mariachis have. That's a Charo. 100,000 men and horses using guns and machetes. Of course, it sounds ridiculous to think that such army could make any harm to Hitler's forces, but the fear at that time was such that they would have done anything to defend the country. Have you heard about the Home Guard in Britain? Wore army uniform, but at least initially armed with agricultural implements and basically consisted of older men and those who were unfit to be soldiers, or in reserved occupations. There is a very popular comedy series about them, but they are quite revered. We are going to have a Home Guard parade in our village this year. I know we were closer to being invaded, but given the US involvement in the war, I get why Mexico also developed its version. The Home Guard were trained in asymmetrical warfare. Basically, they knew how to set traps and ambushes. There are old bridges that are still rigged with explosives. My partner's granddad, served in the Home Guard on the anti-aircraft guns. He was an engineer working for the government and would man the guns after coming home for dinner after a day at work. They were amazing. Basically, Britain had all quasi-military or non-military organizations ram land girls to the WVS to wardens to the Home Guard. My granddad was an ambulance driver and fire watcher during the London Blitz. My mill worked on building tanks. Incredible generation. That terror was real and not some bizarre folk tale. At the start of the War of the First Coalition, Terror joined the French Revolutionary Army, where even quadruple the standard military ration was unable to satisfy his large appetite. He would eat any available food from gutters and refuse heaps, but his condition still deteriorated through hunger. He was hospitalized due to exhaustion and became the subject of a series of medical experiments to test his eating capacity, in which, among other things, he ate a meal intended for 15 people in a single sitting, ate live cats, snakes, lizards and puppies, and swallowed eels whole without chewing. Despite his unusual diet, he was underweight, and with the exception of his eating habits he showed no signs of mental illness other than what was described as an apathetic temperament. We have lost the original videotape of Apollo 11. What we see is a camera recording a TV because the process for sending image from the moon to the Earth was not compatible with TV channels, and after the mission they forgot to check the videotape, so someone probably deleted accidentally what was on it to put a TV show or something. In 1956, Dr. Robert Brownlee, from Los Alamos National Laboratory in New Mexico, was asked to examine whether nuclear detonations could be conducted underground. The first subterranean test was the nuclear device known as Pascal A, which was lowered down a 500 feet, 150 meters, borehole. However, the detonated yield turned out to be 50,000 times greater than anticipated, creating a jet of fire that shot hundreds of feet into the sky. During the Pascal B nuclear test of August 1957, a 900-kilogram, 2,000 pounds, steel plate cap, a piece of armor plate, was welded over the borehole to contain the nuclear blast, even though Brownlee predicted it would not work. When Pascal B was detonated, the blast went straight up the test shaft, launching the cap into the atmosphere at a speed of more than 66 kilometers per second, 41 miles per second, 240,000 kilometers per hour, 150,000 miles per hour. The plate was never found. Scientists believe compression heating caused the cap to vaporize as it sped through the atmosphere. A high-speed camera, which took 1 frame per millisecond, was focused on the borehole because studying the velocity of the plate was deemed scientifically interesting. After the detonation, the plate appeared in only 1 frame, but this was enough to make an estimation of its speed. Dr. Brownlee joked the best estimate of the cover's speed from the photographic evidence was it was going like a bat. Brownlee estimated that the explosion, combined with the specific design of the shaft, could accelerate the plate to approximately 6 times Earth's escape velocity. In 2015, Dr. Brownlee said, "I have no idea what happened to the cap, but I always assumed that it was probably vaporized before it went into space." Later calculations made during 2019, although with unconfirmed veracity, on the question of the survivability of the cap necessary to reach outer space are strongly in favor of its vaporization. Emphasis mine. Source: there exists an urban legend surrounding Operation Plum Bob, specifically Pascal B, which usually, albeit erroneously, refers to the borehole cover as a hubcap, a manhole cover, or something of that nature, and typically claiming as well, again, incorrectly, that it in its entirety, or some still recognizable portion of it, successfully escaped Earth's atmosphere followed by the rest of the solar system and so reached interstellar space. In reality, an entire ton of tank armor ascended at a rate of 41 miles per second, and then literally ceased to exist. The end. This, recruits, is a 20-kilo ferrous slug, field a weight every 5 seconds. The main gun of an Everest-class dreadnought accelerates 1 to 1.3% of light speed. It impacts with the force of a 38-kiloton bomb. That is 3 times the yield of the City Buster drop on Hiroshima back on Earth. That means Sir Isaac Newton is the deadliest son of ABTCH in space. Australia had a prime minister that went swimming in the ocean and then just disappeared. We still don't know what actually happened to him. Also, we lost a war against emus, and there's an unconfirmed rumor, I think, that our current prime minister took a poo in a McDonald's. Edit: I should have been a bit clearer about this. He did a poo in his pants while he was still wearing them. We have a weird history. Your brain predicts what you are about to experience before you actually experience it, by an infinitesimal amount of time. Our vision, in fact, runs 100 milliseconds behind the real world, so our evolution has adapted our brain to predict what is about to happen before we actually see it happen, and it is usually right, but not always. Hence, our entire reality that we experience is actually a story that our brain creates of the real world, and not in fact an experience of the real world. Weird neuroscience stuff. This is why in medicine, there are 4 terms for accuracy: specificity, sensitivity, positive predictive value, and negative predictive value. Specificity is the number of true negative over all actual negative samples. Sensitivity is the number of true positive over actual positive samples. Positive predictive value is the number of true positive over all positive results. Negative predictive value is the number of true negative over all negative results. Doctors would, or at least in theory should, consider all these numbers for the test they are going, as well as considering the actual incidence numbers in the population before making their diagnosis, on top of the physical and historical examinations they take. I have 2, Cleopatra 7. The Cleopatra was born closer to the invention of the iPhone than to the construction of the Great Pyramids. Mansa Musa of Mali was the wealthiest man in human history. He was so rich, when he went on a pilgrimage to Mecca, he spent so much gold on the way there he actually caused rapid hyperinflation of basic goods because he devalued gold so severely, he actually had to buy the gold back at an increased rate in order to stabilize the entire regional economy. 22-year window where a samurai could have sent a fax to Abraham Lincoln. Not really, and this is very misleading. Alexander Bain's 1843 invention didn't work in any way that could be considered fully successful. Honest tape and the samurai would have had to been standing a few feet apart and would have only a vague idea of what was on the fax. A much better fact is that the first commercial telefax service existed between Paris and Lyon in 1861, 11 years before the telephone was invented. It was created by Giovanni Caselli. Methane is a naturally occurring chemical, but it follows a very predictable chemistry. Long story short, it naturally breaks down over time into smaller compounds at a very predictable rate, so you'd expect a planet, on its own, to have X amount of methane, but also find predictable amounts of the Y and Z compounds it breaks down into. Cows single-handedly fart and burp out such unbelievable massive amounts of methane every day that it would be obvious to anyone looking at Earth that there is way too much methane for it to be naturally occurring. It would have to be being actively produced by a living organism. That the manufacturer of McDonald's McFlurry machines, Taylor, has been running a repair racket for years, bugging their machines with malicious code, keeping franchises in constant need of their monopoly on repairs. A small firm called Kitch developed a device that can diagnose and debug the machines. The two companies are now in court after Kitch filed a restraining order following numerous attempts to purchase machines directly, through lawyers, franchisees, and using aliases. I've been watching YouTube pilots and airplane crash videos a lot recently. The passenger air mask's air is produced chemically. The process starts when you rip the mask down. It lasts around 20 minutes. Pilots have tight gas masks. There are multiple carryable oxygen tanks in airplane for passengers who need more oxygen, or if the oxygen runs out. The air is meant for rapid depressurization. When there is a hole in airplane in higher altitudes, you can breathe air in lower altitudes. Even while the airplane is up, the air is meant for the time when plane descends to safer altitudes. Safest place the airplane is in the back of the plane. If the airplane crashes on water, it'll be in million pieces. You always want to hope that the pilot lands on land, even if it meant the plane collides to trees and forests. And that if the plane is about to crash, the pilot might not make any announcement, or it might come few seconds before impact. Interesting. I never thought about the psychological aspect of it. Psychological consequences of hand and face allograft show that it is not so easy to use and see permanently a dead person's hands, nor is it easy to look in a mirror to see a dead person's face, he wrote in the journal. Clearly, in the Chinese case, the failure at a very early stage was first psychological. It involved the recipient's wife and raised many questions. I really wonder what it does to the brain when you lose something and get someone else's body part. Close, but not quite. He shot a cop and ran, then took two hostages, who managed to escape unharmed later during the event. The cops played a recording of Snoop trying to convince him to turn himself in. Not Snoop directly, but he wouldn't. When they finally breached the apartment he had barricaded himself in, the police found him dead with a gunshot to the head, presumably self-inflicted, as the police denied firing any shots at all during the standoff. Oh man, I had a hysterectomy when I was 27, and the most up part of the whole thing was absolutely feeling my organs slowly resettle over a period of weeks. That was the weirdest ever feeling, especially being newly -1 relatively large, dense organ. I'm used to it now, but man, what a weird way to lose weight. There are more bacterial cells than human cells in your body. There are more water molecules in a glass of water than there are glasses of water in all the oceans. The density of the gas you breathe in affects the pitch of your voice. Low-density gases, for example helium, make your voice high-pitched, but high-density gases make your voice lower-pitched. This is due to the way the sound waves travel through gases of different densities. Lemons are not naturally occurring. Humans created them as a hybrid of bitter orange and citron. Cleopatra lived closer to the release of the iPhone than she did to the creation of the pyramids of Giza. Pyramids built 2600 BC, Cleopatra lived from 69 BC to 30 BC. iPhone released in 2007. Mosquitoes are responsible for half of all human deaths. About 108 billion humans have existed. Mosquitoes are thought to have killed about 54 billion. Apex predators have been shown to react to the human voice the same way non-apex predators, like foxes, respond to the sound of apex predators. Recordings of scientists calmly reading poetry were played over several days in mountain lion territory, and the mountain lions all started to hide during the day. Apparently, humans are treated by many predators as a super apex predator.